The autumn rain drummed steadily against the windows of Corner Cafe, a cozy coffee shop nestled in downtown Seattle's Pike Place Market District. The familiar sounds of the espresso machine hissing and customers chatting created a comforting symphony that Emma Rodriguez had grown to love during her daily visits. At 26, Emma had been navigating the world without sight since birth, but her other senses had developed into finely tuned instruments that helped her experience life in ways most people never imagined. Emma sat at her usual corner table, her fingers dancing across the braille pages of a psychology textbook. She was pursuing her master's degree in counseling psychology at the University of Washington, determined to help others overcome their own challenges. Her golden retriever guide dog, Luna, lay peacefully at her feet, occasionally lifting her head when someone passed by their table. "Emma, your usual lavender latte is ready," called Marcus, the barista who had become like a younger brother to her over the past 2 years. "Thanks, Marcus. How's your mom doing after the surgery?" Emma asked, carefully making her way to the counter with Luna's guidance. "Much better, thanks for asking. She keeps talking about that care package you sent over." "You're too kind," Marcus replied, his voice warm with gratitude. As Emma returned to her table, she heard the cafe door chime and felt a rush of cool air carrying the scent of rain and expensive cologne. Heavy footsteps approached the counter, followed by the sound of a man's voice, deep, tired, with a hint of frustration. "Large black coffee, no sugar to go," the voice ordered curtly. Emma couldn't help but notice the tension in his voice. Having spent years developing her ability to read people through their vocal patterns and body language, she sensed this was someone carrying a heavy burden. 20 minutes later, as Emma prepared to leave for her afternoon class, Luna suddenly stopped and began sniffing near the table where the man had been sitting. Emma knelt down and felt around the area, her fingers eventually closing around a leather wallet that had clearly been dropped. The wallet was expensive. She could tell from the supple leather and quality stitching. Opening it carefully, she felt for identification. Her fingers found several credit cards, a thick stack of cash, and what felt like a driver's license. "Marcus," she called out, "someone dropped their wallet. Can you help me figure out who it belongs to?" Marcus hurried over and examined the ID. His sharp intake of breath was audible. "Emma, this belongs to Alexander Cross." "The Alexander Cross. Should I know that name?" Emma asked, genuinely puzzled. "He's one of the youngest tech billionaires in the country. Cross Industries. They develop AI software for healthcare. His face is on magazine covers all the time." Marcus paused, then added quietly, "There's also been a lot of gossip about him lately. Something about his grandfather's will requiring him to be married by his 30th birthday or lose his inheritance." Emma frowned. "That sounds medieval. Regardless, we need to return this to him. There's probably a contact number or address." Marcus found a business card tucked behind the cash. "Cross Industries headquarters is downtown, about 6 blocks from here." "But Emma, this guy is worth billions. Maybe you should just turn it in to the police." "No," Emma said firmly, carefully tucking the wallet into her purse. "If I lost something important, I'd want it returned directly, not left to bureaucracy. Besides, it's the right thing to do." As Emma and Luna made their way through the drizzling Seattle streets toward the towering glass building that housed Cross Industries, she couldn't shake the feeling that this simple act of returning a wallet was about to change her life in ways she couldn't imagine. The Cross Industries building loomed 30 stories above the Seattle skyline, its modern glass facade reflecting the gray autumn clouds. Emma stood at the entrance, feeling suddenly small and out of place. The lobby buzzed with the energy of expensive suits and important conversations. "Can I help you?" asked a crisp voice from behind an impressive reception desk. "I'm here to return something to Mr. Alexander Cross. He dropped his wallet at a coffee shop," Emma explained, Luna sitting attentively beside her. The receptionist's tone immediately became more interested. "Oh my. Mr. Cross has been looking for that everywhere. He had to cancel 3 meetings this afternoon. Please, have a seat. I'll let his assistant know you're here." Alexander Cross stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his corner office on the 28th floor, staring out at Elliott Bay without really seeing it. At 29, he had everything most people dreamed of: wealth, success, recognition, yet he felt emptier than ever. The weight of his grandfather's ultimatum pressed down on him like a physical force. Marry by his 30th birthday in 3 months, or lose control of the company that had been his life's work. His grandfather, the founder of Cross Industries, had been a traditional man who believed that marriage and family provided the stability necessary for true leadership. The clause in his will had seemed like a distant concern when Alexander was younger, but now, with time running out, it felt like a noose tightening around his neck. Mr. Cross. His assistant, Jennifer, appeared in the doorway. "There's a young woman here to return your wallet. She's waiting in the lobby." Alexander's hand instinctively went to his jacket pocket, confirming what he already knew. His wallet was indeed missing. He'd been so distracted by the morning's board meeting about the inheritance clause that he must have dropped it somewhere. "Send her up," he said, turning from the window. 5 minutes later, Jennifer escorted Emma and Luna into his office. Alexander's first impression was of quiet dignity and natural beauty. Emma moved with careful confidence, her hand resting lightly on Luna's harness. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore a modest blue sweater and jeans, a stark contrast to the designer outfits of the women who usually entered his office with matrimonial intentions. "Mr. Cross," Emma said, extending her hand in his general direction. "I'm Emma Rodriguez. I believe this belongs to you." She held out his wallet. Alexander stepped forward and shook her hand, struck by the firmness of her grip and the genuine warmth in her voice. "Thank you so much. I've been looking everywhere for this." "Where did you find it?" "Corner Cafe, near Pike Place Market. You left it on your table after ordering black coffee, no sugar," Emma replied with a small smile. Alexander was impressed by her attention to detail. "You have an excellent memory. Please, sit down. Can I offer you something to drink?" "It's the least I can do." As they settled into the leather chairs in his office's seating area, Alexander found himself studying Emma's face. There was something peaceful about her presence that he rarely encountered in his high-stress world. Luna lay down beside Emma's chair, alert but calm. "I have to ask," Alexander said carefully, "did you know who I was when you decided to return the wallet?" Emma tilted her head slightly, a gesture he was beginning to recognize as her way of processing information. "Marcus at the cafe mentioned your name, but honestly, I would have returned it regardless of who you were. It was simply the right thing to do." Alexander felt something shift inside his chest. In his world, everyone wanted something from him. Business deals, investments, introductions, or lately, marriage proposals from women who saw him as a ticket to wealth and status. Emma's simple honesty was like fresh air. "That's refreshing," he said quietly. "Most people who know who I am have ulterior motives." "That must be lonely," Emma observed, her voice soft with genuine sympathy. The comment caught Alexander off guard. No one had ever described his situation that way, but she was right. It was profoundly lonely. "Tell me about yourself," he found himself saying. "What do you do?" Emma's face brightened. "I'm finishing my master's degree in counseling psychology at UW. I want to help people work through trauma and find their strength. I also volunteer at the Seattle Center for the Blind, helping others who are adjusting to vision loss." "That's incredible work," Alexander said, meaning it. "What drew you to psychology?" "Personal experience, I suppose. I've had to navigate challenges that forced me to develop resilience and empathy. I believe our struggles can become our greatest strengths if we let them." Emma paused, then added with a self-deprecating laugh, "Plus, I've always been good at listening. Occupational hazard of relying on your ears more than most people." Alexander found himself laughing for the first time in weeks. "I imagine you pick up on things others miss." "You'd be surprised what people reveal when they think you can't see their expressions," Emma said with a mischievous smile. "For instance, you're under tremendous stress about something that has nothing to do with work, despite being in your office. Your voice carries tension that goes deeper than daily business concerns." Alexander stared at her, amazed by her perceptiveness. "You're absolutely right. How did you?" "Years of practice reading vocal patterns and body language. It's like learning a different language." Emma's expression grew more serious. "Whatever it is, it's weighing heavily on you." For reasons he couldn't explain, Alexander found himself wanting to tell her everything. There was something about Emma's presence that invited honesty. Before he could stop himself, he began talking about his grandfather's will, the marriage clause, and the impossible pressure he felt to find someone genuine in a world full of people who only saw his wealth. Emma listened without interruption, her face reflecting understanding rather than judgment. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "That's an incredibly difficult position," she finally said. "But perhaps your grandfather, in his own way, was trying to protect you from the very loneliness you're experiencing now. Maybe he understood that true partnership, not marriage for its own sake, but real connection, would make you a better leader and a happier person." Alexander had never considered it from that perspective. "I never thought of it that way." "Sometimes an outside perspective helps," Emma said gently. "The question isn't how to find someone to marry quickly, it's how to create space in your life for genuine connection to develop naturally." As their conversation continued, Alexander realized that he hadn't checked his phone once in over an hour, something that never happened. Emma's presence had a calming effect that made the outside world fade away. For the first time in months, he felt like himself rather than the billionaire everyone expected him to be. When Emma finally stood to leave, Alexander felt a strange reluctance to let her go. "Emma," he said as she reached the door, "would you like to have dinner sometime? Not as a thank you for the wallet, just because I'd enjoy continuing our conversation." Emma paused, and for a moment, Alexander worried he had overstepped. Then she smiled. "I'd like that. But I should warn you, I'm not very familiar with fancy restaurants. I'm more of a casual dining person." Alexander found himself grinning. "I know just the place." 2 weeks had passed since their first dinner at a small Italian restaurant in Capitol Hill, and Alexander found himself looking forward to his time with Emma more than any business meeting or social obligation. They had fallen into an easy rhythm of afternoon walks with Luna through Olympic Sculpture Park, quiet dinners at neighborhood restaurants, and long conversations that stretched late into the evening. Emma had shown him Seattle through her perspective: the sound of the ferries on Puget Sound, the smell of fresh fish at Pike Place Market, the feeling of mist from the waterfront on a cloudy day. Through her, he was rediscovering a city he had lived in for years but never truly experienced. Tonight, they sat on the covered porch of Emma's modest apartment in the Queen Anne neighborhood, sharing a bottle of wine and listening to the rain that had become the soundtrack to their developing relationship. Luna dozed peacefully at Emma's feet. "Tell me about your family," Alexander said, settling back into the comfortable porch swing they shared. Emma's expression softened. "My parents immigrated from Mexico when I was 5. Dad works construction, Mom cleans office buildings downtown, probably including yours, actually. They sacrificed everything to give me opportunities they never had. When I was born blind, doctors told them I'd need constant care and would never be independent. My parents decided to prove them wrong." "They sound incredible," Alexander said, genuinely moved. "They are. Dad spent hours teaching me to navigate by sound and touch. Mom read to me every night until I learned Braille, then made sure I had access to every book I wanted. They never let me see my blindness as a limitation, just a different way of experiencing the world." Alexander reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers. Over the past 2 weeks, they had grown comfortable with casual physical contact, her hand on his arm as they walked, his gentle touch guiding her when needed. Each touch sent electricity through him in a way he'd never experienced. "I'd like to meet them," he said quietly. Emma turned toward him, surprise evident in her voice. "Really? Alexander, you should know that my world is very different from yours. My family doesn't have much money, our apartment is small, and my dad will probably interrogate you about your intentions." Alexander smiled. "Your father sounds protective. I respect that. Emma, these past 2 weeks have been the happiest I've been in years. Your world isn't different from mine. It's real in a way mine hasn't been for a long time." Emma was quiet for a moment, and Alexander could sense her processing his words. "Alexander, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest with me." "Of course. Is this about your grandfather's will? The marriage requirement?" Her voice was gentle but direct. "Because if it is, I need to know. I won't be someone's convenient solution to an inheritance problem." Alexander had been dreading this conversation, knowing it would eventually come. He took a deep breath. "Emma, I won't lie to you. When we first met, yes, the will was on my mind. But that changed within our first conversation. What I feel for you has nothing to do with my grandfather's requirements and everything to do with who you are. He turned to face her fully. You've shown me what it means to see the world clearly. Really see it, not just look at it. You've taught me that strength comes from vulnerability, that leadership means serving others, and that the most valuable things in life can't be bought or sold. Emma's eyes glistened with unshed tears. Alexander. I love you, Emma, he said simply. Not because I need to get married, but because you've made me a better person. You've shown me what partnership really means. Emma reached up and touched his face gently, her fingers tracing his features. I love you too, she whispered. But I need you to understand something. If we're going to build a life together, it has to be as equals. I won't be a billionaire's charity case or pretty accessory. Alexander caught her hand and kissed her palm. Emma, you're the strongest person I know. You don't need me to take care of you. You've taken care of yourself your whole life. What I want is to build something together, as partners. Their conversation was interrupted by Alexander's phone buzzing insistently. He ignored it, but it continued to ring. Answer it, Emma said softly. It might be important. Alexander reluctantly picked up the phone. It was Jennifer, his assistant, and her voice was strained. Mr. Cross, I'm sorry to bother you, but there's been an emergency board meeting called for tomorrow morning. Some of the board members are discussing the will clause again. They're getting nervous about the timeline. Alexander's stomach dropped. I'll be there, he said, ending the call. Problems? Emma asked, sensing his tension. Alexander explained the situation, watching Emma's expression grow more serious. Emma, I know the timing is terrible, but I want you to know that regardless of what happens with the company, my feelings for you are real. Emma stood up and began pacing the small porch, Luna automatically adjusting her position to stay close. Alexander, this is exactly what I was afraid of. How can I ever be sure that your feelings aren't influenced by your deadline? How can your family and business associates ever see me as anything other than the convenient blind girl who solved your inheritance problem? Alexander rose and gently caught her hand, stopping her pacing. Because I'm going to prove it to you. Tomorrow, I'm going to tell the board that I'm choosing love over convenience, relationship over requirement. If they can't accept that, then maybe the company isn't worth keeping. Emma's voice was barely above a whisper. You'd risk everything. Emma, these past weeks with you have taught me something my grandfather was trying to tell me all along. Real success isn't measured in dollars or business deals. It's measured in the relationships we build and the love we share. You've already given me everything that matters. The next morning, Alexander stood before the Cross Industries Board of Directors, 12 powerful individuals who had watched him grow from an ambitious young entrepreneur into the company's leader. Emma sat in the back of the boardroom, having insisted on being there to support him despite his protests that she didn't need to subject herself to what might be an uncomfortable situation. Ladies and gentlemen, Alexander began, his voice steady and confident, I've called you here to address the elephant in the room, my grandfather's marriage requirement. I want to be completely transparent about my situation. He gestured toward Emma. 3 weeks ago, Emma Rodriguez returned my lost wallet out of simple human kindness. She had no idea who I was, no agenda, no ulterior motive. In getting to know her, I've discovered what my grandfather was trying to teach me about the importance of partnership in leadership. Alexander's voice grew stronger as he continued. Emma is brilliant, compassionate, and stronger than anyone in this room. She's pursuing her master's degree while volunteering to help others, supporting her family, and somehow finding time to teach a distracted billionaire how to see the world clearly. She challenges me, supports me, and makes me want to be worthy of her love. He turned to look directly at Emma. Emma Rodriguez, will you marry me? Not because of a will or a deadline, but because I can't imagine building a future without you. Emma stood slowly, Luna rising with her. The boardroom was completely silent as she made her way to the front of the room with quiet dignity. When she reached Alexander, she placed her hand on his cheek. Alexander Cross, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the room. Yes, I'll marry you. Because you've shown me that true partnership means seeing each other's strengths, supporting each other's dreams, and building something beautiful together. As Alexander slipped his grandmother's ring onto Emma's finger, a simple but elegant solitaire that had been in his family for 3 generations, the boardroom erupted in applause. Later, at their engagement celebration at Corner Cafe surrounded by Emma's family, Alexander's close friends, and Marcus, who had insisted on catering the entire event for free, Alexander reflected on how dramatically his life had changed. Emma's father, Carlos, had indeed interrogated Alexander about his intentions, but had ultimately welcomed him into the family after seeing how his daughter glowed with happiness. Her mother, Maria, had cried tears of joy and immediately begun planning a wedding that would honor both families' traditions. "So," Emma said, leaning against Alexander's shoulder as they watched their families mingling together, "what happens now to the billionaire who was looking for a wife?" Alexander kissed the top of her head. "He stops looking and starts living. With the woman who taught him that the best things in life come when you're not searching for them. They come when you're open to seeing the goodness that's already around you." Emma smiled and squeezed his hand. "I love you, Alexander Cross." "I love you too, Emma Rodriguez. Thank you for returning my wallet, and for helping me find something I didn't even know I'd lost." As the celebration continued around them, Alexander realized that his grandfather's will hadn't been about finding just any wife before a deadline. It had been about opening his heart to the possibility of love, partnership, and the kind of deep connection that makes every challenge worth facing together. 6 months later, at their wedding in the Seattle Art Museum, surrounded by the people who mattered most to them, Emma and Alexander exchanged vows they had written themselves. Emma's promised to help Alexander continue seeing the world with clarity and compassion, while Alexander's vowed to support Emma's dreams and to never take for granted the gift of her love. As they danced their first dance as husband and wife, Luna sitting proudly nearby wearing a flower collar, Alexander whispered in Emma's ear, "Thank you for returning more than just my wallet that day." Emma laughed softly. "Thank you for showing me that sometimes the most unexpected encounters lead to the most beautiful love stories." Their story had begun with a simple act of kindness and grown into a partnership that would strengthen both of them for whatever challenges lay ahead. In finding each other, they had discovered that the best relationships aren't about completing each other, but about inspiring each other to become the best versions of themselves.